The creativity is in the use of lighting to tell a story about the architecture or to direct the human eye in architecture. And really, it's an extremely creative process.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today, I'm with Allie Schieffelin, owner and CEO of the Lighting Quotient. Allie, thanks so much for coming on today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Ari.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on.
Thank
you.
you.
It's the Made in America podcast, Allie. So we're going to start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Great. Happy to answer. The first thing is that the Lighting Quotient is in the manufacture of architectural luminaires.
Architectural luminaires.
Mostly the lighting fixtures that you don't see. And the reason why we do it is because we see the immediate and ongoing interaction between humans and architecture. We see wherever we go.
Yeah, we sure do.
Some places that we see are simply utilitarian and others are purely for art's sake. The difference in the lighting really tells you what the intention is for the space, and that's indoors or outdoors. It really tells you what pulls you, what draws your eye, tells you what to experience and allows you to experience everything from the greatest engineering achievements and art masterpieces to how to get to the bathroom.
Spanning a broad gamut, that's for sure. I think we got a lot to cover, Allie. I mean, there's just a really interesting background to the business and where we've gotten to, also where you're going and, your thoughts about manufacturing in the United States. It is the Made in America podcast after all, so that's super interesting. And I think we've also got to cover kind of a difference in lighting. Like I think, I've certainly learned, I know we talked about sort of pre-show, how much I've learned in my own life experience about how critical lighting is to positively experience the place that we are. And I think you guys do something that's different and unique than what people might think about, like just buying a box light at Home Depot or whatever, and how important that is. And obviously people could hear from your answer how passionate you are about it and what a great job you guys do. So we're going to get to all of that. Okay. But let's just start off a little bit with, maybe you want to give the audience a background on the Lighting Quotient, like kind of the history of the company.
Sure, be happy to. It's a very cool family story, believe it or not. We're over 100 years old, and the firm was founded in 1920 as Shemitz Brothers Electric. And that's a traditional, typical electrical wholesale distribution company. That's everything from selling chandeliers to all of the switchgear. We were a Square D distributor and providing all the materials for contractors. My father inherited the company when his father passed away at an unlikely young age of a heart attack. And my dad came home from University of Pennsylvania, finished his education later, and took up the distribution business. But really what he loved to do is boss people around and tell them where the lighting fixture should go. So if we went to a restaurant together, or he went into the pharmacy and he couldn't read the label on the back of the package, or we went to the restaurant and he wanted them to dim the lights that were causing him glare in his eyes, he would be sure to tell the owner, the manager, the person in charge, anywhere we went, how the place should be lit. And it coincided the exact time when the IALD was founded. My father hung out his shingle as a lighting designer, kind of a sub-trade to architecture in and of its own right, in the 60s, in the early 60s, and his entire job was focused on the selection of and the application of luminaires for the appropriate lighting, both indoors and out. And
So sort of like a personal passion. So it sounds like he sort of started off as the way you sort of frame it up, just a typical lighting distributor, buy something from someone else, get it to somebody else who wants it. And then he sort of developed more of a passion for the use of lighting, and that sort of led to where you are today.
that's exactly so.
Wow.
And it's the use of the right type of lighting with a particular nemesis in glare.
Ah,
Okay.
the awful glare.
Unwanted light, obstructing your vision and causing all kinds of unwanted ills.
Got it. Yes, it's a scourge, glare.
A scourge.
So was he trained in that? Was that something that he developed over
It's so
time?
interesting because my father was a liberal arts major, and if he followed his passion, he would have gone into acting.
Okay.
Truthfully, and so it really was that force take over the business and run it that allowed him to be creative and look at where the creativity was in lighting, and the creativity is in the use of lighting to tell a story about the architecture or to direct the human eye in architecture. And really, it's an extremely creative process. And the manufacturing came about because there were so few tools available. And he would cobble together tractor lights and par lamps and all kinds of things in order to create a sense of luminance on the ark in a synagogue or at a house of worship or in a pharmacy where the use of light might be extremely necessary, or for a university or a school setting, or in the office.
And indoors and outdoors.
Both indoor and outdoor applications. And he absolutely loved it. And there is quite a bit of science to whether it's reflectance or glare that I already spoke of, but also in the age of energy efficiency, there's so much importance paid to how and where we put the lighting, not only for that artistic appreciation of it, but to put it to its best use, to put every unit of light, every lumen to the direct target that is named and identified by the designers.
And so, so this is all kind of happening in like the 60s and 70s. And how does the company grow from there? Because, I mean, that's an interesting time to do that because you don't really think of the 70s, at least I don't think of the 70s from an architectural design perspective as being particularly elegant, sort of like a lot of like, I don't know, brutal, boxy structures. So it's an interesting time to sort of come up with something that to me sounds really like elegant and refined.
It's so funny because you probably have seen an awful lot done at the Hotel Marcel, which is New Haven's own Marcel Brewer tribute. And interestingly, even brutalist architecture, I have finally decided, reluctantly or reticently decided, can be absolutely stunning. And I think they've done a phenomenal job there.
With the proper lighting.
With the proper lighting.
Which I actually, but I do actually totally agree with that, right? Because without the right lighting, it just looks like boxy, and brutal. I mean, it's not like, I know it just doesn't have the same elegance to it, but I think you're right with the right lighting. In that hotel in particular, which I've had the pleasure to stay at once, is
have you? Yeah.
Yeah. It looks really nice at night, especially.
Yeah, very much so. So what happened is that from cobbling together all kinds of sources for light and using outside custom shops like a Kraus Heinz, for example, to make luminaires for particular office applications. Open office, very tall walls that are being used for display, transportation, airport, Boston Metro. He favored very much indirect lighting, meaning I am going to light the ceiling so that the reflectance from the ceiling will make a very, very even glow on the entire surround. I am going to light the wall because the light may seem to be the subject. The wall may be the subject of light, but in fact, it's the source of light. And so his invention was around a reflector that did a phenomenal job of lighting very tall and very broad spaces evenly. And that's a physics problem. It's about driving many more units of light to the far end of a surface or plane than to the near end, so as to give it the appearance of being perfectly even in its illuminance. He used the combination of an ellipse and two parabolic sections. And as difficult as the name is, the word elliptipar is really ubiquitous in the lighting industry.
Elliptipar.
Elliptipar.
Okay.
The literalness of the engineering, right? An ellipse and two parabolic sections. That reflector drove the company's growth for 35 years. Okay. And to this day, reflector technology is used, but because of the advent of LED, really most of the patent technology, if not almost all of the patent technology that was invented during his day, is now both obsolete and lacking in real usefulness.
To explain that a little bit. So prior to LED, it was all like, just kind of walk me through that.
Okay, so all of it is lamp technology, whether it's tungsten or it's metal halide or it's fluorescent.
Okay.
So in early days, the manufacturers would actually, Osram would come out with a new ceramic metal halide lamp, and they'd give my dad a year to study it, to develop the reflector system around it, knowing that his invention would pull demand for those reflectors. The move from traditional sources to LED happened so much faster than even the Department of Energy predicted. The energy savings are irrefutable. The fact that they run cool and can, and that doesn't mean that temperature is not a very important part of how an LED performs, because an LED does not like heat or water or changes in condition at all. It can be a very fussy beast. But the fact is that it drove a lot of invention, and all of a sudden, where we had all kinds of cylindrical sources, now we have single node directional sources. So,
and that's why you don't need so much reflection, because you've got such a inexpensive way to put sourcing in so many different places. I don't need to have one major source and reflect. I can just put the little individual things everywhere. Is that the...
You could, but really the reason why I was so dissuaded by my, not my investor base, but my constituents, is because by definition, reflected light is less efficient in the number of lumens that you're going to get out after you've bounced it off another surface. In fact, indirect light, my whole raison d'etre, if you will, is really something that went very much out of fashion very, very, very quickly, beginning in the aughts of the new millennium. But really, the uptake in LED technology is the only thing that my clients wanted to see happen right around the time of the recession, right around 2009, 10, 11, 7, 8, 9. Recession hits us a little later because the lighting equipment is delivered to any project or job site kind of toward the end. So I actually had kind of a look over my shoulders, and when the recession was coming, didn't probably make as many adjustments as I should have at the time, but I did know it was coming.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I just want to like nerd out on this a little bit to make sure I follow.
It's good.
So the transition to LED, you're saying that indirect light fell out of favor.
Correct.
And so then what does that mean? Because I actually feel like, at least my more experience has been like it's coming back, or at least it's a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more interesting. And I think the story that I told you when we spoke on the phone the other day was, you know, when we first revamped our house, we just like kind of did whatever they told us to do, which was just sort of lights everywhere in the ceiling that essentially just light up air. And it's not a very comfortable place. And we did our family room add-on, and we hired a lighting expert who did a lot more architectural lighting. And we have lighting on surfaces, or indirect lighting off of the walls, or lighting up the art pieces directly. It's so much more comfortable. I mean, we've got a lot more light switches, but you can also play with it so much more, and it's so much more interesting. Sconces going off the wall instead of all these like can lights just shooting light in your face.
It's so interesting because the advent of LED and the availability of it to consumers has made lighting be part of day-to-day conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't name a time ever when my father's business of architectural lighting was part of cocktail party fodder. But today it is, because people see so much bad lighting that has come into their faces. what we're looking at in this room are 2x2 squares of very, very bright light, which creates a couple of bad situations. One is that there are the haves and the have-nots, right? So if your task or your desk is lit, you're happy about that. But you also may get veiling reflections off of the shiny magazine that you have. Well, you notice I brought you a very matte, a very matte piece for your desk. So it is very interesting that the use of indirect lighting went out of favor, but the real reason is because of the inefficiency in the early days of LED technology. So if I was only getting 30 lumens per watt and am restricted by code for the number of watts I could use and the amount of space that I have dictated by all of the code standard bearing bodies, then indirect light became kind of a nice to have.
Oh, a lot more expensive too, right?
And direct lighting, not more expensive, just not achievable
because you didn't have
with the same wattage.
Right, got it.
And yes, you're right. There's something about using layers of light, which is often spoken of in my industry, of being able to light the surrounding surfaces in order to balance that light so that your near distance and your far views are balanced in ratios depending again on the application. If I want to do focused work, I want most of the foot candles on my task.
Foot candles?
Just units of light.
Got it.
Okay. Individual measurements, increments of light. I want my focus to be on the task. If I have writing to do, particularly if I have intricate work, now you introduce a flat panel somewhere and I've got a balance of light between my paper tasks and my electronic tasks. Plus there are other people in the room at work and they all need lighting for their tasks. So am I going to put something overhead that's going to cause glare into the eye of the person who's just away from it? Haves and have-nots.
Sure.
The people who
plus we've all experienced the lighting from the ceiling, and then when you lean over the thing to do the work, you're casting your own shadow onto the work you're trying to get onto.
And even, a lot of discussion about the bane of flicker, the disruption of glare, the disruption of focus, and really some medical harm that can be caused. So it's a fascinating world and more science all the time. And today is a super exciting time for us because the efficacy of LEDs at the source has ramped up all the way through the 120s and 30s to the 150s. And so we talk about the lumens at the chip level, which theoretically could top out right around 200 lumens per watt at the chip. But there's still advancements, not as quick as Moore's Law, but still plenty of advancements in LED lighting. And then there's what we call delivered lumens. So how many lumens are we delivering to that surface that is the object? I'm just pointing to a random wall in your office just to point out that, or to the artwork piece, or to direct people toward the exits, or in the parking lot. Whatever the application, there is a different set of standards for the amount of light required by code, but also opposing it, the amount of energy that you can use to achieve it. So we finally come back to a place that makes my heart sing, which is where we have enough efficacy coming out of the chips that a lot of the tools in the toolbox, which really encompass what Elliptipar was known for and really what our strongest affinity as a practice is for indirect lighting, even though we do other things as well, is now not only coming back into favor, but there's a whole generation of young designers, industrial designers, lighting designers, MEP engineers, architects who are having so much fun playing with all these new tools, new to them, tools in the toolbox.
So is it sort of like what's old is new again? Like we sort of come back full circle?
That's kind of a theme in your podcast, I think, too. But 100%. And nowhere is that more visible than in the factory itself, which is a 1902 factory that is so cool. I hope you have a chance to stop by at some point. We still have wood floors in our factory.
Really?
It's an old brick building. The neighbors tried to get me to shut down the factory whistle that rings 4 times a day. And we were able to preserve it as part of our historic landmark status, which makes me so happy because actually it's how I keep time. And it's a stunning building. And they made equipment to make, what they made is all of the webbing for other machinery. So as part of like a made in America story, the factory itself, New Haven Mills, was one of the early factories. We didn't own it. My family wasn't involved in it. But just to be there gives me such a deep appreciation for that concept that I've heard in your podcast before about what's old is new again, and about doing things right and making them here.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, before, I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more about the factory, but I just wanted to talk like just really quick, like help the audience understand, like where would they see what you guys do in their daily life? Like, I think that, you've done really, I think a great job sort of talking about, and your passion's amazing about lighting. And I think people, when they experience it, especially if you can juxtapose good lighting to less good lighting situations, you really understand how much it makes you feel affinity to a place and appreciate what you're doing. Like, where would someone see the work that you do and have a sense of what we're talking about in their life?
So I think probably the most frequent visits would be to an airport or transportation hub. Down at World Trade when it was redone, there's a phenomenal beautiful architectural space that's often referred to as dinosaur bones because it's kind of a white skeletal structure. And we actually partnered with the lighting designer caused us to be partnered with another company that does do very direct aimed sources of lighting. And we're doing the linear in-ground lighting up the sides of this structure. But in really almost any airport, from JFK to Chicago O'Hare, which will be redone, and I hope to hell I'm going to get a part of that, I mentioned LA, we just did Jackson Hole, Wyoming's airport, Charlottesville, Virginia, I'm having a hard time. We just did the LaGuardia Head House. So I think that would probably be the most obvious application where the most number of your viewers would have a chance to encounter it.
And where did you talked about sort of your dad's passion. Clearly it must be in the genes, because I cannot imagine him being more passionate than you are. Where did you learn so much? How have you absorbed this so much into your bones?
Really, my legacy, what he really left for me, I told you that most of the patents have either expired or become irrelevant in the age of LED. But he left behind a group of people that he hired in his later years. I mean, I didn't expect him to pass away in his early 80s because he was a tank of a guy, super strong, athletic, skier, sailor. But he really left me an incredible team. Penn State is a school that produces top-notch architectural engineers, and 2 of the lighting designers that originally worked for him in the lighting design practice before manufacturing stayed on in manufacturing. Another architectural engineer from UNH, more guys coming in from Penn State and gals, and then adding on in layers, both in the factory and out in the office. And so I think the passion comes from having so much to learn all the time. I don't think that's unique to me. I think there's some people who are just into learning and some who aren't. And the industry has left me nothing boring to study because the changes have come hard and fast. Some of them unfortunately have also been very difficult life lessons about how to keep up with change or leapfrog yourself in front of it. But interestingly, this industry is full of important and interesting education. And some of that comes back to lighting and health, lighting and the environment, the role that lighting has to play in the entire net carbon zero game, lighting and killing viruses because germicidal lighting is going to happen. It's not something
like using lighting to do disinfectant stuff.
Absolutely, to light the upper air, and I could talk about that more if you want me to. But I tell you that going back to the office, well, a lot of reasons why people hate their office is they hate the lighting. It's like one of the first things that people complain about, and the office needs to feel a lot more like home. It needs to embrace its people, but it also has to offer places to do focused work. It's not all about collaboration and lunch, although they're two of my favorite things. Sometimes you actually need to get work done on a deadline.
Let's say somebody's listening and they're like, yeah, I agree. What's the obvious way to just engage a lighting designer? What's an obvious way to sort of make it more apart? Because I think, and I told you this and I said it even earlier on the show, like sort of lighting almost gets sort of thrown in when you're doing a redesign. And I've done a number of office build outs. I've done some home renovations. Like if you don't sort of proactively sort of push your general contractor or your engineer or whatever to like think better about lighting, they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. We just put it on the lighting plan. And you don't think about it until it's like too late. So if someone is doing that, how do they get better lighting? How do they think about it?
I have to say that a lighting designer will really understand all of those principles of balancing layers of light, of drawing attention where you want it, of creating a sense of privacy where you don't, of creating a sense of drama, creating places that are safe. You want your pool deck to be lit at your home because you don't want some other kid's parents suing you for, for the cuts and scrapes that happen at the pool deck or trip and fall. So I do have a very high level of respect for professional lighting designers. I think that things like this are helpful. I think that overall, just being aware of the changing lighting conditions that make you happy and that make you retreat. How do you relax? Do you turn down the lighting when you relax? It does push my buttons that perhaps lighting, because it happens so late, the actual equipment going into the project happens so late that it can be given extremely short shrift in the budget, and it could be given extremely short shrift with regard to the thought process. Like, where the water has to go, where the air ducts have to go. Lighting, I could put a little here and I could put a little there and deal with it in table lamps. I think that's just changing by dint of the fact that people know that the lighting is important to them. They may not know how to do it, but they know that it's important. And it's pretty damn easy for most electrical contractors to put you in touch with somebody who can just give you a sense for the basics of right and wrong.
I just 100% agree. And the times when I've taken the extra step to hire a lighting designer, it's like so worth the time and energy investment, because it is the way you're going to experience the place that you're in forevermore. So if you're going to spend $500,000 building something, you should spend the extra, 50 grand to get the lighting right, or, what I mean, whatever it's going to take. So, 100%. So talk a little bit about the conversion to like vertical integration, because you guys originally were distributors, then you sort of moved to lighting designers, and then you moved to sort of manufacturing. So it's sort of like designing, building, and selling. Like, kind of talk about vertical integration, why that was a direction you guys went, and the importance of it.
It's so important, and it's a path that not only am I on, but I'm scratching to climb up the vertical integration path. Not because the business has really changed. For example, we don't have a separate practice for lighting design anymore, partly because there is a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Sure.
If other lighting designers don't want to give your lighting design practice the manufacturing attention. I think that spoke to Cy, my father, a little bit. But more important is really the vertical integration that we're going through now, because I am not a technology for technology's sake proponent. And I can be wowed buy the newest piece of machinery, the robotic pick and place packing machine. It makes me drool, really. I love watching it. I've seen film clips of the newest BMW factory and the robotics that are going on there. And I definitely have that kind of machine envy. But there is nothing like the people who actually do the work and check it and look at it. And just like the building in 1902, you will see a lot of old machinery in the house. And so the vertical integration has been thinking about what really can create efficiency versus just the optics of efficiency. So one thing we were having difficulty doing was laying down silicone over circuit boards with LED chips on them in a perfectly even way. So there's a material that goes down, it has to cure for a couple of days, and if somebody rocks the boat, you're dead.
Right.
What does that mean? It means color over angle, which means if the silicone is thicker in one area than another, you might get a little shift in the color perception of light coming out of it.
Which you don't want.
You absolutely don't want. So I got talked into a robotic arm that lays down the silicone, and I drool over it. The most vertical integration I've been able to do has been to kind of buy a machine at a time. And the only break to that was that in 2020, not unlike other companies that you've talked to, one of our neighborhood competitors that was in our area went under, excuse me. I said went over. And it was funny because they had been bought by private equity capital. And I get some private equity capital envy sometimes too. I'm the 100% owner of my company, but easy money seems easy. The problem is that easy money wants a return and they want it quickly and they don't always know the fastest path to it. So I was able to acquire a company called Electrics from New Haven, Connecticut, out of bankruptcy. They were going into liquidation. And really the highest ROI that I've gotten has been from the extremely inexpensive prices that I paid for machinery that added so much to my sheet metal bending capabilities, my welding capabilities. I brought on people and was able to add people that brought in expertise in those areas that I didn't have and fortified my whole operation. So I think you'll see me continue to do that kind of vertical integration. The rest of it is trying to streamline the operations as much as possible and trying so hard to identify what is going to be the next source of lighting. So LED, laser out there, maybe. Fiber hadn't proven out in the last go-round, and a lot of people thought that fiber optics was going to be the end game. Ended up being great for technology in zeros and ones, but not great for lighting.
Why?
There's some marine applications.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Why do you think that was such a hot thing and didn't pan out?
Well, it's really kind of an interesting thing. From a physics point of view, a strand of fiber is all total internal reflection, right? So I put the light source in here, and it doesn't come out until it's here.
Right.
And you probably remember kind of like the feathery 70s thing that was in like the head shops that looked like a little bit of stars.
Yeah.
Now, in a boat where I can put the glass in and nothing can get into that glass strand or that glass pipe, if you will, that's a phenomenal thing. But getting enough light out of the fiber is an awful lot of cost for it to actually be able to illuminate with 50-foot candles your notes there. So it was a very big hype, but it's okay.
Is it
ended
losing?
Up being a good story.
Is it losing like luminescence as it travels over time?
It wasn't even the transmission losses as much as the efficacy of how much light you could get out of that would actually be able to have forward throw or be projected out onto a surface.
It's just like the tip of the fiber may glow, but you're not going to get it at distance.
Get that big
yeah, that's not going to help. Yeah, I got you.
So you never know. Maybe somebody will figure out how to do it, or figure out how to harness lasers, or figure out how to get more than 200 plus lumens per watt out of a chip. But then there are form factors. What do the architects like? What are the organic or linear or hard shapes that are in favor right now? And the vertical integration part is what really needs to be made more efficient to reduce the reliance on people. There are very few things that I've seen in my industry that are done better by the robots than are done by hand. We even looked at automated powder coat paint machines. We think that we do a better job with the guns and the turrets and our 3 different booths, which means that we can run 3 different colors at a time. Visual inspection in addition to technical gauge inspection. So you'll see a little bit of vintage when you come to the factory in a really good way.
That's cool.
Do we need labor? Sure we do. And do we need skilled labor? Yes, we do. But I feel like that whole journeyman to artisan path is being considered by more young people and is a reputable and valid path, even for those of us who grew up that we had to be a doctor or a lawyer or an investment banker, which I was.
Yeah, exactly.
I was a trader. And those were the people that mattered. I see more need in the trades and more respect for tradespeople who do artisan level work than ever in my lifetime. I don't remember ever having the kind of awe and respect for electricians or electrical contractors. And now I could tell you, they drive the boat.
Yeah, they do. So do you guys have like an apprenticeship program to get people to kind of do that? Because you mentioned like sort of journey.
We're a very small company, but we do have cross-training, and we've got an unbelievable partnership with our union that allows us to, rather than classify all of the workers, to actually have them all working toward multifaceted skill sets. And so that will continue. I think as we grow, we'll add to the apprenticeship program. And we've used some of the third-party, government agencies, a concept to do lean manufacturing training. And we'll go into all the trade schools. And in the state, there are a lot more programs now that we're able to draw from. I don't think I could ever do as good a job as some of the colleges or local schools that are teaching some of these skills and provide that kind of an environment. But it's certainly a worthy goal. Yeah,
no doubt. I mean, it's so interesting. Allie, I just have learned so much about lighting and like where it's all going. And like, I mean, it's just really, it's just been so unbelievably interesting. And I just loved hearing all about it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
I love it.
I'm going to ask you like a few wrap-up questions. You ready?
Go for it.
Do you have a favorite business book?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked, because the question you asked at the beginning should tip you off. I'm a Simon Sinek person. Yeah. So Start With Why is actually a book that I made the entire Legion of Officers read. And we dissected it better than most white wine book clubs. It has helped us in a number of ways to define not only why we do what we do today, but how we're going to get to our lofty goals of providing really great lighting for architecture over time.
That's fantastic. If you had to do something, Allie, other than be the owner and CEO of the Lighting Quotient, what would you do with your time?
Okay, there are 3 things I would do. 3? At least. So I want to go and work for girls who code, because I don't know how to code, and it's one of my favorite philanthropic organizations that ever existed. And I think helping girls or boys or non-binary people in STEM or STEAM or whatever, that would be one. I'd like to teach yoga in desert plains and mountains and shores. And I've always had a huge affinity for fitness, and I don't spend enough time at it now. So I'd like to devote a whole chunk of time to it. Maybe be a spa secret shopper for like the Four Seasons. Ooh, and just jump from spa to spa.
You know what? Of all the ones I've heard, I think that might be what I want to do with my time. What's something, Allie, that you learned early in your life or early in your career that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
My father has so many cliche statements. What burns in me the most is that you have to want it. You have to want to win. And that definition can change. And I know that there's so much existential philosophy, going around our world right now. But winning by whatever your definition is something you have to have inside. I've listened to so many good speeches, and there are others, including those that tell young people not to go out looking for their passion. I think it's kind of a version of the same thing. If you're just looking all the time at what next on your goal, and you take the opportunity to do everything that's handed to you with equal amounts of intensity and energy, what you love is going to happen. Or you'll do the same thing until you love it. You asked me before, why do you have so much passion for lighting? Well, now I've been doing it for 16 years. In addition to having inherited it, you can't not be passionate about it if you keep at it. And that's what I learned.
Stoke that
Keep
fire.
at it.
Yeah, keep going. I like it.
Going.
What's something that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you went back and told young Allie, and if young Allie had listened to you, it'd make a real positive impact on her
She wasn't a
life?
good listener, I can tell you that. Young Allie was stubborn. Not be so stubborn. What would young Allie like to know?
Now, maybe more need to know, because she probably thought she knew everything she needed. At least young Ari
She
did.
so did. It's kind of the same thing as that happiness is a choice. And if you do the right thing, if you don't hurt anybody or proffer hate in any way, pretty hard to go wrong. I think we make the stakes seem so high for young people, and that need to feel like they're going to be an instant success is so burning that success comes in every freaking form, and don't worry so much about how it's going to come to you. Don't do anything hateful or mean, and all the rest is going to just come. Keep your eyes open.
Wow. Allie, I'm going to leave it right there. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your views. It has been awesome having you.
Thank you so much. I love being here, Ari. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.